Dr. Carolyn Leaf, what a treat to have you on your new book, Love. I love it. Help in a Hurry. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Molly. I've been looking forward to this. So thank you for having me on your show. I'm very excited.
I am too. Well, thank you. I want to start. You've spent over 30 years, researching 40. Well, you look 29, so I don't know how that could be, but let's run with that. You spent over 40 years, researching the mind and really what I think is so particularly interesting, the mind-body connection. So let's start there. What's really going on, in our brain and our body, when we feel anxious, when we feel overwhelmed or a little bit stuck, what's going on?
Such a good question, and it requires quite a, let me give you the simple version. The simple version is that the mind is not the brain. So what's really key here is to understand that what we do with our mind will affect the brain and the body, because the brain is not the mind. And honestly, most people think it is, because for the last 50, 60 years, with the very strong focus on what we call materialism and neuroreductionism, which basically means everything's brain, 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 brain. And so we get a lot of the brain made me do it, and this is in the brain. And it's great because we're all excited about the brain and we're learning more about the brain. But it's not where everything happens. It's basically the brain it allows us to experience life. But the real work happens in the mind. So when it comes to what's going on with anxiety and depression and busyness and burnout and all these things that people are battling with, that we all as humans battle with, it's mind first. We've got to address it at the source, which is, what are we doing with our mind? And when we address it at the source, then the brain and body simply do what the mind tells it to do. So then the brain and body will follow suit, which is instinctively, we kind of know this, but we don't have the words for it. Because we know, like, oh my gosh, I'm worked out. Oh, I can feel it in my body. We say things like that. We have for years. And we see most people have heard or read something in an article somewhere about how stress changes your physical body and that kind of thing. And that's what we're talking about here. Stress, mind, anxiety, all these things. Mind is where we've got to begin the show.
And so when we think about beginning the show in the mind, how do we sort of utilize this information, your 40 years of research, which is remarkable, to help us better solve for stress, for anxiety, for overwhelm, for the demand that so many people are feeling today?
So the answer is simple, in that we need to get into mind management lifestyles. We literally need to manage our minds. And then that makes you think, well, then what is the mind if I'm managing the mind? So the implication there is that mind's quite big. It's obviously got different levels, because if you are managing your mind, what's you? And so you are your mind too. So it's quite a funny thing. So the
mind is on. I mean, I say that again. That's an interesting comment, right? I mean, that's sort of
an interesting concept. Yeah, makes you think a little bit, because I say mind management. You must manage your mind, but then what's you? Who's you? And so that's where so that takes us a little deeper. Think, okay, well, who's you? Well, you are your mind, which means your mind has got different levels. So you can move into different levels of mind management, and that's the key. Our superpower that we've actually known about for thousands and thousands of years. It's been spoken about in ancient texts, in different religions, different philosophies. This whole concept of our humanity, our you-ness, our aliveness, this human thing of being able to think and feel and choose and direct our lives and make good and bad choices, that's all mind stuff. But then we come to the thing of, okay, well, where does anxiety fit in? Where does depression fit in? Where does stress fit into this equation? Well, we are humans. In life, things happen, and we process that with our mind. Our mind does all the receiving and processing. So it's this sort of metaphysical physics thing that we can use physics to explain. It's electromagnetic fields and gravitational fields and quantum energy and all these different ways of explaining it. But that is processed first. So if you think of like a bubble around you, the easiest way to picture this is that there's this bubble around you and through you, and that's this energy that is animating you. When you're dead, that bubble kind of pops and it goes somewhere. Consciousness goes. We've got so much research showing that once the physical body dies, the non-physical part, our mind, continues. Whatever that looks like, there's many different ways of examining that. But essentially, the physical brain and body are only 1% of who we are. The mind is 99% of who we are. So the mind is this you-ness, and it's got different levels. So if I'm making a good decision, if I'm choosing well, if I'm like calming down and listening to this person and not getting flustered and not getting angry and, really tuning into my intuition and, making those great creative decisions that we want to optimize our functioning, then I'm managing my mind. Then I'm tuning into the different levels of my mind. But if I'm worked up and I'm aggravated by someone's comment, or I'm flustered by the multitude of things I've got to do, and I just kind of bash through the day or bash through my life, then I'm not going to be activating all the deeper levels of my mind. I'm going to be operating in a very surface level. And that then doesn't get the best out of it. It kind of accumulates, and you'll get through life, but the implications are massive, because we're literally battering our brain and our body, and we are be living in an inefficient way. And that's kind of what I mean. Does that sort of make sense?
It does. It does. It's like when we say our body's talking to us.
Exactly.
And you talk about it. I mean, it's at it's at the cellular level, right? That the impact this can have on our health, or obviously our sleep, our disease. You even talk about. So what are the signals, right? Maybe the warning signs that would help us see. Man, I've got to listen to my body. I've got to listen to my mind. I've got to pay attention to these thoughts because they're not serving me.
Such a great way that you phrased that. Okay, so essentially what happens is that our very big intuitive part of our mind, the part that's got all this wisdom, never stops working. It's all our intelligence, our creativity, our intuition, our logic, our reasoning, kind of in layers. Logic, reasoning, going to creativity and imagination, going down to intuition. That part of us processes every single thing we've ever experienced and will experience. So it has all the processing capacity, plus it stores what it's processed. So all your memories grouped into thoughts are there. Now, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, what's also interesting, and I'm going to answer, I'm just giving you the little bit of the background so people understand this.
Sure.
So essentially what happens is that we call that the non-conscious, N-O-N. It's non-consciousness, but it's brilliance, okay? So it's not unconscious. It's not an unaware. It's very aware. So we call it the non-conscious, extremely aware. It's your most aware part of you. It's the most intelligent part of you. It also has solutions. So not only do we have bad reactions to life and wire and build those memories into this non-conscious part, but every time we make a mistake, or we choose badly, or we have an experience that's toxic, we don't only build the toxic, immediately we generate from the non-conscious mind a solution, or a series of solutions, which is really interesting. There's this solution generator, and it protects us. It's wisdom. Wisdom always has an answer. That's kind of what it is. So we have a problem, and it builds, but we also have a solution being generated, which is fascinating. Now, the signals. So now if that is happening, and life is happening to me, and all these things are going on and accumulates over time, that means I've got a bunch of these toxic things plus a bunch of solutions. So what your non-conscious mind also does is, without you even being aware, it's doing this all the time. It's keeping us alive and functioning. It's keeping our heart beating, or it keeps us breathing. It keeps all the physiology of our brain and bodies also run by this part of our mind. And so essentially it's watching and seeing, hey, geez, like you hanging on to that unforgiveness, or that bitterness, or that toxic issue, or that trauma, and it sends messages to your body, and your body talks to you via what we call bodily sensations. So that's one signal. So the non-conscious mind is sorting this out and doing all this stuff and finding the problem and the solution. And then it sends the first part of you, not even consciously aware of this yet, but it makes your body aware first. That's why we feel tension in our shoulder, gut wrenching. And then a few milliseconds later, we consciously, I feel this, I'm anxious, I'm worked up, or whatever. So there's a pre-consciousness that pops into your body. And that's one of the signals, the bodily reaction. Now, there's 3 others. That's no signal. There's 4 signals. They work together. And
so one is the body. The body, you feel your shoulders tight. You feel anxious, maybe tight breathing. Okay, and so then one, that's a signal. Okay, something's going on. This is awesome.
Exactly.
Yes.
And at the same time, the non-conscious, which is brilliance, sends the top 4 or 5 of the most disruptive things that it's told your body to be aware of, and it puts them into the subconscious. And the subconscious is like a little waiting room, like at a doctor's office. And if you think of a doctor's office, those that are the sickest will go in first. So it orders them in order of priority, and it puts them into the subconscious. And not only the problem, but the solution too. Okay, so here's this disruptive thing in Caroline's life or Molly's life, or these top 4 things at the moment are disrupting us. They get put into the subconscious with a solution. Okay, and then so the body now the top one, the body's now reacting to the top one, and the of those 4, if you think of them in priority, so 4 people in a waiting room. Here's the sickest one. Okay, so that's already, your body's been made aware of it, and now the other 3 signals come from the subconscious into the conscious mind, and they come through as our emotions: anxiety, depression, frustration, jealousy, worry, overwhelm, burnout, all that stuff. And then not only that, it also comes through as our behaviors. Because if you think of it, now my body's reacted. Now I'm feeling anger. Now I'm going to say something. I'm going to snap. I'm going to have a bad tone in my voice. I'm going to send that nasty text. I'm going to do this with my body. So there's some kind of behavioral signal. And then there's a perspective. And that is, this day is terrible, or life sucks, or they'll never get it right. And it all happens very fast. But the conscious mind is only aware of all the signals after all this work's been done. So most people, when they get these body sensations, want to snap, anxiety, life sucks, because it hits you all at once, that's what it feels like consciously, we tend to get sucked into that experience, and it feels like things are falling apart. It feels like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. And then we say something, we get that reaction, and we have a fight, or we feel terrible because we sent that email, and then the day just kind of gets bad, and then you sort of have a happy moment. And most people live like this, and they don't need to. And that is why I've done the work that I've done. I mean, I fall in that category. All of us, there's no one exempt. If you're human, you battle with this stuff. The key is that there's a way out. There's a way to manage that. So instead of seeing those signals as bad, rather see them as data. So we are able, Molly, it's a fascinating thing. We are able, with this knowledge that I'm giving you, we are able to then step into another part of our mind that observes. It's like a guiding parent or a wise mentor.
So, and just real quick, Caroline, how do you do that, right? Like, so your shoulders tight, you're tight breathing, it's physical, maybe in some nature. We know that doesn't feel good, right? We know that maybe we're reacting in a way that isn't consistent with how we want to show up. So how do we observe it in service of shifting the way that we show up in that moment, maybe moving forward, or the way that we react to those moments?
Brilliant question. The answer is self-regulation that we train into ourselves. We are totally capable of standing back and observing ourselves. So let me demonstrate it. So now you've got listeners and viewers. For those of you that are listening, for those of you you're seeing, you can do this activity. Watch yourself like I'm doing it right now. Be aware, Molly, of yourself talking to me. So be aware of what you look like on camera, where your hands are, your body. Think of how your body. Just watch yourself. And I'm watching myself. I'm talking, so now I'm aware of my tone. So now I'm going to mute it a little bit. I'm going to speak a bit slower. I can control it because I've made the decision to watch myself. So let's say now you're having an argument with your husband. I did this yesterday. My husband said something.
You met with your husband?
Oh yeah, I've been married 40 years. We work together 24/7, and I got totally irritated because he said something and he got irritated with me. But here's the difference. In the past, that would have exploded into a massive argument because we were running along with our signals. Just think of this. If we're all honest, we've done this. We're running with our signals.
Sure.
All those 4 things. So all I'm doing is living in the 1% experiential moment. But because I know what I know, and because my husband has no excuse, but because he has no excuse because he's
this book guy. I mean, he's read it. He's listened. Yes. He's your understudy, man. Heck yeah.
He's my lab rat, okay? So my kids too. So we get into this argument, and both of us stop and stand back and literally observe and immediately move into this. And the potential would have been heated, and it was such a stupid thing to me. We're arguing about. But what we did was because we know hang on, I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm just going to step back. We're both going to breathe deeply, sip breathing. We did the sip breathing. You breathe in, and then you can't breathe anymore, but you take one more. You do that. So you actually, my shoulders are rising. And as you do it, you actually feel high, but you forced oxygen to the front of the brain. You forced your brain waves to calm down from high beta to a combination of theta and alpha. There's a bunch of science happening in that 10 millisecond, like 1 second sip breathing. So we stopped, we made it to, we chose to stop, to stand back because we've trained ourselves. We took the breath, and then he said to me, and I said to him, okay, what were you trying to say? We both said it at the same time. So I said, no, you go first, or whatever. So we were suddenly so polite to each other. And this is not an inmate. So the long and the short of it is that we got ourselves under control. And then instead of saying, you made me so mad, we shifted from the you statement into, I felt like this when you said that. And we each had a turn to say that. In other words, what we did was we chose to stand back and observe. We calmed down our neurophysiology, and then we did a mind shift. So all of this is mind hacking. We hacked our conscious mind that was very messy, and we got into the wise part of our mind that's not messy. And you need both, because the messy part's how data comes in. You need messy. It's like a child learning, a toddler learning. It's all very messy, but that's how we learn. Think of learning anything new. It's always messy at first. So the messy is necessary, but messy needs guidance. A toddler needs a parent. So you've got to train yourself to choose. Now that you're aware you can do this, you train yourself to choose, to get back into that moment. So the whole thing is a mind hack. You are hacking your messy mind and your brain and your body, and you're hacking that moment. And what you're doing there is you're choosing to stand back, observe, do the breathing, do a mind shift. Instead of you make me mad, I am feeling this because of, so you remove the aggression, and then you get to a solution. Well, what are we going to do next? We've both calmed down. We're both hearing each other. We solved the problem. And we both were very apologetic for even allowing 1 minute of fighting, because we felt, and you feel your neck tightens up. You feel terrible after having an argument. Now, that didn't happen. We've been married 40 years. I'm not saying this is going to happen straight away. And we work together 24/7. We practice this, so we still can have arguments. The difference, Molly, is we get out of them. Now, that's an argument. What about a business meeting? What about where you catch yourself people pleasing? What about where those things that we do? So all those signals come through, and they activate responses. What we need to know is how to immediately step into self-regulation zone. And that's what Help in a Hurry is about. Help in a Hurry, literally, that's why I wrote this book. Because people would ask me the questions you've asked. But how do I get there? How do I start training myself? How do I initiate that awareness of, okay, I'm in this mode where I just want to scream, shout, fight, people please, go in a regret cycle, cruise, and then whatever. How can I stop that? Because the minute you catch that, you step into self-regulation. The more you practice it, like anything in life, the better you get at it.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool. I mean, because you frame up a multitude of, I didn't get X done today, right? Or the people pleasing, or some of the things that you said, and then you sort of shared. So let's say someone is, like, I guess I could use me a little bit as a guinea pig. I find that I am very, what would be the word, optimistic about the amount of things that I can do in a day, and probably even at some level, just excited and prideful of the pace and of execution at some level. But I've tried every planner in the world. I mean, I have, but I put too many things, whether they're in a day, and so. What I thought was kind of cool was you sort of frame up recognizing. And so maybe you can walk through that as an example, or another one that you think is common for people relative to, maybe it's people pleasing, maybe it's doing too much and then feeling like you're not getting enough done when in fact you probably are getting a lot done. And we're also human beings, not human doings, right? So
exactly.
How do you coach somebody that maybe feels stuck, or there's a little bit of a gap, if you will, in some of the scenarios that you unpack, to in fact sort of walk through that process of recognizing, reframing, resetting, using that, as you said, as data to say, okay, wait a minute, I'm pushing a lot of things to the next day, probably because there's too much on this day, or I'm trying to please too many people, or what's the process that you would advise somebody on that's consistent regardless of where they're a little bit stuck?
Fantastic question once again. So I love your first all of them are good, because all of those examples are good, and they kind of all cross over, because that whole doing too much thing, we do live in a hustle society where it's been encouraged. So we wear productivity like a badge of pride. And it's a lot of it's, environment always affects us. So there's that hustle culture which contributes. Then you're probably a high energy person like me, where you can just go, go, go. The key thing to understand here is there's a lot of different things going on. So the first thing is the environment that we live in, the hustle culture. Secondly, when you're a high energy person and you live in a hustle culture, like you and I both sound like the same people, then there's also probably an underlying element of perfectionism. Like, you just, you need to know that at the end of the day, I mean, maybe you find yourself in your mind saying, okay, I've done this, and this so far today, and you feel good. And that's not a bad thing. But the problem is that it's 8 hours into the day and you haven't actually sat down and had a cup of coffee without working. You have eaten your lunch on the fly, if you even eat lunch. And you've now got to the end of the day where you actually feel quite proud of yourself, but you now think, oh, hang on, I've still got those things to do. So I'll just get the kids sorted out. I'll get dinner. And then you climb back in your office and lose another 2 hours. Before you know it, you've hit that 10-hour or 15-hour mark. And you think, wow, I've done so much. But then suddenly you find yourself flipping from being excited into, wow, I feel kind of depressed. And I'm not a depressed person. And I feel kind of like worn out. And I'm feeling really irritable. But there's still so much to do. And then you start saying things like, I didn't get X done. And I didn't get that done. And instead of enjoying the fact that you did so much stuff, your exhaustion has now hit a peak where instead of looking at what you have done, you look at what you haven't done. And so the pressure that we have, positive and negative pressure. Positive pressure is like it goes along with positive stress. Our entire brain and body, our entire psychoneurobiology, mind, brain, and body, all function on positive stress, which is the same as positive pressure. What that means is that we are very capable to do a lot. There's nothing wrong with doing a lot. The problem is, when does it flip into toxic stress or negative pressure? When we push beyond a certain point. And why do we push beyond a certain point? Well, there's underlying things like perfectionism. Where did that come from? Childhood, marriage, work, whatever. Self-critical talk. Where does that come from? So there's underlying things that tend to drive that. That pattern will then lead to levels of exhaustion where you don't even know how to enjoy yourself. So you're on holiday or it's the weekend and you're supposed to be relaxing over fun lunch with your kids or something, but you find yourself on edge and tense, even though you're trying not to talk about work. You see, I'm painting a picture. So I think a lot of people can relate, maybe not in as much detail. So I've actually covered in that, your question and my explanation so far, I've covered about 5 chapters. So the way to work through the book is to actually, and I'm going to come back to give you an example, is just so that people know, well, then how do I use the book? Go and look at the chapters, and it's how there's people.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Thank you.
It's easy to go, here's a gap that I have, and you frame it up, and here's kind of what to do about it. Here's another gap.
Exactly.
It's cool.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got exactly that. So what's going on in my head? I'm under pressure. My brain won't shut up. I want to punch that person in the face. The world seems so black and white. I'm tired all the time. You probably find you could tick off all 3 of those I'm doing at this moment, and whatever, or 2 or whatever, and then just look at that and look at the technique. So now let's pretend you've done all of that. I've created the scenario. You asked the question. I created the scenario. I pointed out where you'd find the technique. And the reason I've done that is because I don't have time to explain every detail. So people know where to go after the session. Sure. Okay, so now let's take that I'm so busy. You want to do so much. Your conscious mind and brain are like your cell phone. They're going to actually eventually get exhausted. But your non-conscious mind, the wise part of you, never gets tired. So what we often do is, because we can, people that are high achievers and people that are in general have, how am I trying to say this? When you've tapped into that power of your non-conscious, it's very nice to carry on. It feels fantastic. But the problem is, your brain and mind need recharging. Your conscious mind, which is only awake when you're awake. It's not your non-conscious. Your conscious mind is different to the non-conscious. Your conscious mind works with your brain directly, and both of those get very tired. Like your phone needs charging. So when we hit beyond 8 hours, and it seems to be that the trigger point is around about 6 to 8 hours, which is about 55 hours a week. When we go beyond that, we trigger all our physiology to go into reverse mode. So we put our brain and our body into toxic stress and toxic pressure, and our physiology responds accordingly. And now the message to our brain and our body, because our brain and our body don't think, they simply responders. They're 1%, they respond to the mind. So now they're getting this energy that's very not nice and flowy. It's like this waves of the sea that are like crashing, like a bit of a hurricane and big waves and whatever. That's coming through the body, and the body then goes into the brain, and body physically will go into flight and fright, or one of the stress forms. And the signal is, oh, there's danger here. I must be on high alert all the time, because that's what I need to protect. So we train our brain and our body. We don't rest. We train our brain and our body to constantly be in high alert. So anything like perfectionism, traumas from the past, self-criticism, people-pleasing, those things that we do to keep ourselves going get worse. They explode, because they become these automatic loops that we jump into, because we just going all the time. So once again, awareness is the key, is to recognize which of those patterns is my worst one. So maybe it is that I'm not, but what I would recommend, for example, what you've just described, is I would look at the chapter on rest and restore. There's a chapter on I'm exhausted all the time. And you may not feel exhausted all the time because you're high energy, but if you really look at that was for me an eye-opener for me, because I'm thinking, no, it's the pressure one. But actually, no, what I needed to work on was the rest and restoration, the exhausted chapter, because I know when I get exhausted, my mood flips from being the most optimistic person with all these ideas into someone quite negative, and that's not who I am. So I've learned this. I've learned to read that signal coming from the subconscious, that I'm now starting to feel a little bit depressed, a little bit anxious, a little bit edgy. I'm tired. I need to restore. I need to not have my phone on while I'm watching that TV show. I need to put my phone...
Not multitasking.
Exactly, because it's just bad for you. I'm not going to eat dinner talking about work. I'm just going to talk about fun stuff. When I can sit, I've got 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon, and I'm the temptation is to let me read a few more research articles. No, that's not relaxing. Go and be in your garden and walk, play with your dogs in the garden. I mean, whatever it takes. Do you see what I'm saying?
100%. And it was so interesting. I had Dr. Arthur Brooks on my podcast recently, and he said something that just really resonated, which was progress doesn't make you happy. And as absurd, I said that to my children, and they're like, yeah, no kidding, Mom. And I said, no, but I mean, like, because I believe in life that we do want to just continue to show up as a better version of ourselves every day. We want to serve others. We know that
grow, yeah.
Right. And we want to serve others, and we want to support others. But it's that tightrope, isn't it, that we're walking relative to serving and helping and solving and doing and making progress with the rest and restoring, the rebooting, the recharging, so that we actually do that even better in the end.
Exactly. That's totally correct, Molly. So what I have found from research, working in clinical practice for all these years, I don't practice anymore, but I did for 25 years, but I still do research, clinical trials. I do all the stuff I'm doing. So I'm always researching whatever. I say that to say is that we can train that self-regulation. We can train ourselves to recognize that progress, we can enjoy progress if we are actually managing our mind correctly, if we're self-regulating, if we are resting, if we're recognizing that the people-pleasing is actually disruptive, where it's coming from. When we learn how to catch the moments. So what I'm saying essentially is that we need to build insurance policies into our psychoneurobiology. What do I mean by that? Psych means mind, neuro means brain, biology means is basically the rest of the body. So our psychoneurobiology is this mind-brain-body connection that we spoke about in the beginning, the mind being the 99%. So the brain and biology are only the 1%. And I've been saying that you ask me how to do it, we've got to self-regulate. Even this progress example you've given, how do I can hear, this is a great thing that I think it's Dr. Brooks said about progress. But how do I don't want it to just be head knowledge. How do I actually incorporate that into my life? You have to self-regulate. You have to train yourself, and it's going to take 63 days literally to train yourself to do those. So this help in a hurry, these things help you build the insurance network. So this is how it works. May I explain? Is that okay? Can I dive in?
I mean, I'm like, I think we're going to go for 2 hours. I know you have a meeting, but we're going to skip it. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, that's why people need to get the book. But please unpack it. That'd be awesome.
Let me give you the basic concept. Is if you want to start this right in this moment, the good news is that you can literally, like we buy insurance policies for our house and our health and all that stuff. What is the concept of an insurance policy? I buy something in case my house burns down, or in case there's a flood, or in case I get sick. Then I have that backup finance, so I'm not caught. We're not doing that with our mind. When I talk about mind management, I'm talking about putting insurance policies into the brain. And that means that I need to wire in networks. You talk about a lot of resilience on your podcast and resilience.
Sure.
Resilience means wiring, literally wiring insurance policies into the psychoneurobiology. How do I do that? Through self-regulation. How do I learn to self-regulate? Through practice. How do I practice? In the moment. So that's what Help in a Hurry is. You start your practice in this moment. So you choose to say, okay, today I'm going to observe, or this next 7 days, I'm going to just observe me. I'm going to observe what triggers me the most. How am I speaking to my loved ones? Do I speak, is my tone raised, and am I speaking louder? What is making me mad? When, how often? In other words, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why of how I am functioning. What are those signals? What is my body telling me? As I feel it in my body, what emotions are linked to that? What behaviors? So I feel this in my body, tension. I feel frustrated. What behavior? I'm snapping. What perspective? Oh my goodness, I'm getting quite negative about life. No judgment, no, just pure love, pure you observing yourself. I promise you, if you do that for a week, you kickstart this process. In that week, you can do that week. You can even do it. You don't even have to do it for a week, but I'd recommend you do it for a week. But in that week, you can still catch the moment, because I can tell you now, within 2 hours of doing this, you already start recognizing and wanting to change. And that's when I would recommend, okay, let's say someone today is going to irritate you. I'm pretty sure. Because if it's the news, if it's a family member, if it's an email, if it's a post on social media, there's a guarantee that today you're going to probably get irritated and want to.
But we have a choice to either be irritated or not.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So you can practice it today. So that's you took the words out of my mouth. No one can actually make you irritated. No one can make you people please. No one can make you angry. You choose. So self-regulation tells us that I choose to get irritated with my husband yesterday. I choose not to. I choose to get irritated with a comment on social media today. I choose not to. No one can make me angry. If you can get that thought in your head, no one can make you angry. You choose to get angry, and you can and you can choose to observe how you're functioning. You put those two together. Take the techniques, practice those techniques, and build them into your brain. So when you are irritated, you either get out of it super quick, or you don't even get into that mode. You're not going to be in an irritated mode and say, just hold on, before I get irritated, let me quickly find the technique. I'm being facetious.
Right.
Practice it in the mood.
So what are the, because people have blind spots in life, right?
Yeah.
So what are they looking, like, what are the things that were maybe the questions that you ask yourself, what are the data points at some level that you're starting to make sure that you're looking for? Maybe they're the most common that you see in people. So in other words, if you said, you know what, I'm going to take the next 7 days and I'm going to observe, what would you say? Observe what? We're going to observe maybe when we're tense physically. Walk us through that real quick.
Brilliant question.
I would
brilliant. I'd work around those 4 signals. And by the way, I had those 4 signals are in this book. I've also got lots of other books, but I have an app called the Neurocycle app, where I also literally walk you through this process like I'm giving you therapy. And that's available on iTunes, Google Play, and the web store. So
what's it called?
It's called Neurocycle. So neuro as in Neur, like the brain, neurocycle.
Okay.
Neurocycle. So it's the formula that I've created over 40 years that's scientifically researched, clinically tested. That is literally how you manage your mind. So it's the 5 steps of how you do this process. And the first step is gathering awareness of your 4 signals. So if you do nothing but that for the next few days, and you will start learning your trigger points. And then you can say, okay, that's chapter 15. I need help in a hurry for people pleasing. I'm people pleasing at least 5 times a day. I'm doing it. These are the situations. This is the who, the when, the what, the why, the how. Let me find my technique. Let me practice my technique as an insurance policy. Let me wire it in. And then when I am triggered, I've at least got a technique. The first time around, you'll be bad at it, but within a few days of practicing it, weeks, you're going to get good. Okay, so the 4 signals is observe yourself. So in it, as much as possible, step into. So I'm going to start today. Throughout today, I'm going to self-regulate. I'm going to manage my mind through observing how I show up. How do I show up? Through my 4 signals. So I'm going to watch myself. So now I go into a meeting and I'm going to watch myself. And someone says something. Okay, what's in your body? What emotion? What are you about to say? And what's your perspective? Ask yourself those 4 questions, and you can do that silently in your head, and you can do that really fast, and that'll kickstart that. And then you can see, oh gosh, I'm about to speak with my tone I'm about to speak whatever, this tone. I can feel my body tensing. It's unreal how just watching that will help you calm down. Then you can just, you can think of, maybe remember what I said, do a bit of a mind shift, maybe do a little bit of breathing. The mind shift concept is I choose not to let them get irritated with me. And you can also say to yourself, when I've got time, I'm going to sit down and actually go find the chapter, whatever, and work out what I need to work on. But that's what you can do. Observe, ask yourself those 4 questions. The first day you might do it once or twice, but by the second day, you're doing it more. By the third day, you'll be amazed at how quickly you can learn to self-regulate. So there we go. There's a quick way of getting started.
No, I love it. And I've heard you say, right, that you've worked with people with traumatic brain injuries. You've worked with people that, maybe it's something from childhood. And you're saying that there is no exception to this, that everyone has the ability, essentially, right, to rewire and step into this.
Absolutely.
That's incredible when you really think about it, because it creates, there's no excuses at some level to make a shift.
No excuses at all. And obviously, when you're in extreme states from extreme trauma, like I've had patients who've been sexually abused for years, you need the support. But you can't have a therapist with you 24/7. Yeah, and if you hear stories of people going through terrible things and rising up, what is the key thing underlying everyone who's gone through a hard time? They choose to no longer stay the victim. It doesn't excuse what's happened to you. Never excuse. That's always bad. But you've got to disengage from that, and you've got to get your own life. So you don't control their actions, you control your reactions. And when you get that, that's what I saw with my patients. Whether they had a traumatic brain injury where they weren't able to learn or think properly, I would teach them how to learn again. But I would also teach them how to manage their emotions. People that had strokes, heart attack, people that were in genocides. I worked in Rwanda over the genocide era. I worked in Africa over the apartheid era. Listen, I worked with we reached thousands of people, and the consistent thing was, this is your mind. This is where you have power. This is what you can choose to do. I can't get you out of poverty, but I can tell you how to live within your mind so that you can get the strength back, so that you don't fall into that pattern of depression that takes your creativity away. Whatever situation, the mind is where we are not paying enough attention. The wellness movement has taught us a lot about the brain and the body. It taught us about the mind, and that's why my focus is on the mind. You would look after the mind, you look after the brain and body.
Yes, amen. It's interesting because for me, I look at so many things through the lens of sports after 20 years as a sports agent, and so there's these athletes, right, who they're clutch. They love, Billie Jean King. They said, pressure is a privilege, and they find a way to drain the putt when it matters most, to complete the pass when, or to make a heck of a pass with it, or to pull it down, or to drain the putt, whatever. What role does visualization play in what we often see with, and sort of, probably this is a little bit of a 2-part question, right? But like the athletes that we see, that we consistently know, they find a way, they get it done. The Tigers, the Kobes, the Tom Brady's, the Serenas. How have they trained? Because I think about a salesperson or a leader that's finding themselves in a really critical moment, and they got to find a way to ensure that they get it done. They drain their version of the putt. They drain their version of that tough shot in a critical moment. What is it that's happening there? And then I'm curious just what role, I know in sports, visualization plays a big role in sort of remembering that seeing yourself, if you will, in that moment. What role does that play in it? But I'm just curious.
I love that. So two-part question. First of all, the visualization. Secondly, the element of what makes them different. Okay, I can tell you right now, all of those sports, whether it's someone who succeeded in sports or Serenas and so on, or business, there's one key thing that they do. It's self-regulation. A person that's successful self-regulates. When you self-regulate, you step into wisdom. It's that simple. When you self-regulate, and self-regulation is a big thing. Self-regulation is mind management. And that's a new concept because people know about self-regulation, but what does it mean? It means you're managing your mind. It means you're using your wisdom, the wise non-conscious to manage the conscious reactions. And when you do that, you step into another zone because then you know when you're tired. So someone like Selena or anyone who succeeded, they recognize that point where they're going to flip. So they know how to restore and get back online again. And they'll even tell you, because I've listened to a lot of people that have succeeded, kind of thing, and you know this yourself from the work you've done. They sometimes will push beyond, and then they know they have to pull back and restore. There's an awareness. There's a self-awareness. They can regulate. People that burn out don't self-regulate. So they're brilliant. They've got potential, but they don't self-regulate. Those are the bosses that lose their temper too often. They potentially are amazing leaders, but they don't self-regulate. Self-regulation is absolutely key. I have seen over my years of practicing, years of consulting, that those people that hold together, it's self-regulation. It's tapping into the superpower of the mind. When you're in a self-regulated state, you tap into the solutions. Remember, I said the non-conscious doesn't just find the problems that are holding you back. It also generates the solutions. It's also the part of you that is where intuition, creativity, imagination, and intelligence reside and work together as a network. When those work together, that's when we see the level of Tiger Woods, etc., that we see. That is only going to come through self-regulation. And that's what I'm trying to teach people to do with my work, is they focus, yes, the body, because automatically when you self-regulate, you will work on the body, but not the body first. Don't put the 1% first. Put the 99% first.
Yeah.
And those people may not have had the words, the Selenas and the Tiger Woods, they may not have had the words that I'm giving you now of, I focused on my non-conscious. I'm sure they've never said that. But if I had to sit with them and say, look, this is what you do, they would say, yeah, those are the science words for what I'm doing. And I know that because I've spoken to a lot of people that have been successful and done interviews and with them. So yeah, that is key. Visualization, huge, because visualization taps into the non-conscious mind's creative level and imagination. And basically, we are literally like our consciousness, our mind, which is often referred to as consciousness, is where the power lies. So when I visualize, I am setting up an insurance policy. Once again, I am building a network of energy that converts in my brain into a physical protein network. So I am building, and it also in my body, I am building a physical thing when I imagine. There's been research studies showing that people that are trained to learn to play the piano in their mind first and then only go to the piano, once they did visualization, played better and longer and went further than those that were played traditionally. Lesson number 1, I'm on the keyboard.
Unbelievable.
So that is what sports success and like surgeons and that kind of thing, that visualization is absolutely key. I do nothing without first visualizing. So there's a lot of visualization exercises in here, but you've got to use them in the right place, Molly. You can't just visualize. It's not manifestation, not that surface level. I can picture it will happen to it. No, that's what you're doing is you are creating a network that is pulling from a field of possibilities and you're making them probabilities, and you are narrowing down the potential for something to happen. It is not I'm going to imagine that and it's going to automatically be it's going to like a magnet be attracted. That is a very shallow surface vision of that concept, and it's very unsustainable and it's very unrealistic. Vision boards, goals, where you just think, that's that whole progress thing. There's a pathway, there's a journey to travel. And it's always a field of possibilities that you narrow down to probabilities that narrow down to potentials, and then something happens. But the way you drive it is coming from self-regulation and visualization.
I think what's cool about what you're saying too is that I think there's danger in attaching to the outcome. Right? I think that creates tremendous anxiety if we're overly attached to that, right? And I saw that in sports all the time, but I think we can see that if we create this quote unquote vision board, as you said, or this optimal outcome, and we just stay obsessive about that, brain's focusing. That's dangerous, isn't it? And
Totally.
yeah, yeah.
You got to enjoy every step of progress. So people like your high people that have achieved all kinds of levels of success, they are enjoying the journey along the way. They're very focused towards where they want to go. But it's these moments. That's where the concept of help in a hurry. It's not a quick fix. Quick fixes are band-aids. They're not sustainable.
Right.
This is help now to build the long term. So it's all the visualization and it's the breathing and the mind shift. It's all mind work to rewire and set you up for that success, so that you actually enjoy every tiny little step, that you're not thrown off by change, that you can change quickly. People that get stuck with a goal, when something throws them off their pathway, they get thrown. But if you have an expectation mindset, you're not going to say, oh, I failed. You're going to say, oh, I learned what not to do. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, I'll try this. Or, wow, that's a mess. I lost this, I lost that, whatever. But it's not loss in terms of negativities. Oh, that was part of the journey. How do I use that data to move forward? That's what I'm talking about, the self-regulation.
Yeah. Well, I love and we have and I talk about it in my latest book, Dynamic Drive. We have this tool. What's that?
Congrats on that book too. Amazing.
Well, no, I only mention it because I unpack a little bit about the dopamine effect, which is we have this resource that we can tap into that helps support acknowledging our progress. So, listen, you're a busy woman. You've given me a lot of time, and I love it. I could do this all day. I'm coming to your town. I'm not going to say it out loud in case you don't want me to, but we need to have a cup of coffee or a cocktail. Tell me this, what's, the 63-day rule that you reference and the rule, habit information you talk about, which I think is cool. And you sort of challenge the old 21-day change a habit myth. And your app is a resource for us to tap into with this too.
Absolutely. So part of the research I've done over these 40 years is looking at how long does it take to actually change, so that a behavior really does manifest in a sustainable way in your life. And the thing of 21 days is actually a myth. It was never science. And it was set up in the 60s by it was birthed in the 60s by a plastic surgeon, Dr. Meltzer. I always say his name wrong. I've got that in my references. And he basically was a plastic surgeon, and he saw that stem cells, the stem cells cycle is more or less 21 days. So he saw his patients healing in cycles of 21 days. So physically, the body goes through these cycles. But the thing is, it's not just one cycle of 21, and also it's in that region, but also it's not one cycle, it's multiple cycles. So what researchers like myself over the years have looked at is that if you test in 21 days, there is going to be change, but it's not sustainable. So people will feel it depending on what they've done in that 21 days. That's very key. But they will feel change, but that change is it's like a little plant that's just been planted. It's not strong yet. So by day 28, most of the change and that they want to manifest or show up, I hate that word manifest, show up in their life as something they want different in their life, falls away. And then they get very frustrated because they think, but I did all that. They can remember what they did and how they wanted to be, and the little bit of success they achieved, but it drops off. So there is a journey, and one of the big clinical trials we did recently, which we've got papers coming out soon, but essentially what I've shown is tracked like per day the cycle that you go through. It's like a journey. It's a typical hero journey, but it's literally the ups and downs. So you need a minimum of 3 cycles of 21, minimum for basic change. So even to learn to mind manage and to grow the self-regulation I'm talking about, you're going to have to practice the day. You're going to have to go through a sequence daily. It's a 5-step process that is a formula that makes your mind-brain-body connection work properly. So it's driving the energy and the protein and the changes in your psychoneurobiology, all that fancy physics and neuroscience. If you do those 5 steps, it's doing that in your mind-brain-body. And if you do that consistently daily over 63 days, that change will show up.
That's sustainable.
Sometimes
people want. That's what we want.
Exactly. Not just keep going and round and round and round.
Right.
Now, if it's a big thing, I just want to quickly say, if it's a big thing like trauma happens to us. Trauma is not a bad habit. But trauma manifests as a habit because it's a pattern. Anything that becomes a pattern of response that you practice becomes a habit. So these habits we create that are bad habits, you make bad choices. And then there's trauma that become habits, but that happened to us. And they're very salient, they're very strong, so they imprint very deeply. That will require multiple cycles of 63. So, for example, when I would work with people with sexual abuse and that sort of thing, you're looking at probably 6 or 7 or 8 cycles, depending. So just wanted to say that as a heads up.
That's a good call out. That's a good call out. Thank you for that. So we end with rapid fire. So I'm going to hit you with one or two quick ones.
Go for it. So not try and be short-winded and not long-winded.
You're great. You're great. So a habit or maybe a belief that has really changed your life.
It's so easy to answer. Mind. Understanding the power of the mind, and mind management, it's changed me completely.
Yeah. So when you feel overwhelmed or when you feel unfocused, what's the first thing that you do?
The first thing that I do is I step back and observe and look at my 4 signals. And then I draw on whichever technique, because what caused the overwhelm in the moment? Was it a burnout? Was it an irritation? Was it a people-pleasing moment? Was it a perfectionism? Was it a self-critical? So once I'm in that self-regulated state, I can observe, then I can apply a technique immediately. And I can do that in under 60 seconds. And that's what I teach you to do. You can literally do that in under 60 seconds. You can redirect.
What's the top 3 most common, observations that you see, the data points that you see that are most common in all the research that you've done that has helped the most people? What is it? Observing? Yeah, go ahead.
The self-regulation obviously is number 1. As soon as people learn that key, it changes. The second thing is the recognition of choice, that I choose to let people make me irritated. They don't make me irritated. It doesn't mean that you have to excuse their behavior. They can do, but that's their irritation. I don't want to let that come in me. I don't want to fuse that negative energy. I don't want it in me because it will go in you. So that's key, self-regulation and choice, because it gets people out of the victim mentality. People feel victimized and people do become victims, but if you stay in a victim mentality, you get stuck. So we're not excusing a bad person's bad behavior, but you're releasing yourself from that connection. Okay, so those are really, really key. And then really training yourself to top 3 things. It's the self-regulation, it's the choice, and I think the third thing would then be the recognition that I can let a person get. I mean, there's so many more things, but
there is. I mean. And there's the building, the 63 days, baby. The ask, we got to do it. We got to do it. That's it. Yeah. Hey, girl. I mean, I can be your head of sales. Let me know. So one last question: who or what is a game changer who inspires you and why?
Gosh, I've got so many. I have so many, but at the top of my head, someone like Wilder Penfield, who's probably the top neuroscientist on the ever. He did so many different open brain, and he was a total materialistic and reductionistic person, and he shifted and believed that consciousness exists beyond the physical brain. Consciousness and mind is not in the brain. It uses the brain. But he went into his research saying brain is it. Brain produces consciousness. Brain is it. He came out of his research saying, no ways, we got it wrong. And no one has matched his level of he did thousands of open brain surgeries, and his work is phenomenal. I mean, there's a lot of people, as Benjamin Libet is another one, but really Wilder Penfield's work is exceptional.
Wow, that's fantastic. And so is yours. This book it's killer. Help in a hurry. I love it. Dr. Lee, thank you for taking time. This is super fun. I appreciate you.